Hello, everybody. And as a stickler for convention and an absolute commitment to starting on time, I am going to start on time. So welcome to this group. We may still, of course, have more joining us. But if we're going with the principle of everyone who comes is the right person, size is not important. But I do want to ask Patrick if he will unmute himself and show himself on video. Rebecca, I'll encourage you to as well, because it would be nice for us all to see each other. And I would like Patrick, if he would, to make any points that we didn't get an opportunity to hear at the end of the presentations earlier on. So Patrick, are you there? Perhaps not everyone is quite as literal as me about start time, so I won't push him. When he comes back on screen, I will ask Patrick to share whatever it was that we didn't get a chance to hear before he was. I don't think he was booted out. I think it was. Oh, here he is. We're not sure what happened, Patrick, earlier on, are we? But I've just said that it would be great to hear any final points that you might have wanted to make this morning before we go into a wider discussion. Is that putting too much pressure on you to do that?
No, I'm not easily pressured.
Well, clearly not, with doubling your shows for this year. But let me ask you to finish off, and then we'll carry on with our discussion.
Yeah. Well, I think I was kicked out when I finished 2020. I wanted to say something about 2021, more or less. So I'll share again. I think here you should be able to see that. So since we had a good rehearsal last year, we were well prepared for this year. And what was wonderful is that a lot of artists and companies taught a lot about how to handle or how to invent different ways of telling a story to an audience. And since we had a little bit experience from 2020, we worked all winter, all spring, inventing new ways, which we still, we have a lot of shows this year, but it's still small capacities because we follow the rules and some distance. But I have never seen in my programs such a wide variety of forms of presenting things, which is really nice. This is a picture of a theater walk we're organizing in the Antwerp sewer system. Some of these sewers are accessible if there's not too much rain. So we're taking 20 people into the sewers, telling stories about what lives underneath. 2 months long, 3 times a day, with different casts of actresses. This is a Ferris wheel where you embark in a gondola with your family, or bubble, as I say here. And you get binoculars and you get a headset. You hear a story, and with the binoculars, you can follow the story while you're turning around. And it tells a little bit about the city now, how it is changing. This is a audio podcast project. This is a foot scraper. I don't know if you have it in your country, next to the in older houses, next to the door. Elke, it's a local artist, started talking to people confined in their houses about their stories and their dreams and their history. And then she made, in the foot scrapers, a very miniature thing about their dreams and wishes. So we now have 45 of them, almost invisible because they're low and very small, but where we made audio walks. Every food scraper now has a QR code where you can listen to the story of the people living in the house. And there's go to our website, visit our festival. There's a lot of very nice and wonderful new ways of telling stories.
Super. Thank you for that, Patrick. And I'll throw it open now. I mean, just extraordinary how inventive and how flexible artists can be. But what I found last year is how extraordinary and how flexible audiences can be, and how extraordinary and how flexible our own teams can be. And that, you know, don't judge a book by its cover. Because they're called a festival director doesn't mean they can't also be a community connector. And just because they're called a production manager doesn't mean they can't suddenly become a digital floor manager. Well, not suddenly, it took a lot of learning. But that was the biggest thing for me, was how the team grew, developed, changed along with artists to adapt to the situation. Anything, I'm going to throw it open, but do, if we're talking over each other, do start to put comments and questions in the chat. But perhaps we might want to start off with questions to Alan and or Patrick with after their presentations. And I'll just remind you of some of the things that came out of what Alan said there. You know, he gave us some advice about trying ideas online, and especially internationally. And I think for some of us who program, that fear of not presenting the high quality finished work might be something we need to address in the online environment, where we can show tasters or works in progress or tryouts maybe. And just on that, and another point from Alan, not judging a book by its cover. If his 80-year-old parents are going online, let's not have preconceptions about what kind of audiences we might expect when we go digital. Think about a variety of versions, Alan said as well, that artists could be thinking about rethinking a presentation that might have been made for one context to be reworked for another context. And that's not just necessarily live and online. So I'm just throwing some of those things out that came up, if anybody wants to respond particularly to those, or indeed to make another point. Anybody else in this group? And I am going to point a finger, I'm afraid. I'm looking at Chrisanna Eigner there from Findhorn Bay Arts and asking what your learnings were about producing and what you're going to be taking forward out of the COVID period.
Hi, Stella. Hi, everyone. I had a feeling you might point a finger at me there, Stella. Stella and I have known each other for many years. I had the great pleasure of working as part of Stella's team in Belfast for Belfast Festival at Queen's for many years, and I've taken much inspiration from you over the years in how to work with a team, how to adapt, and all of these skills definitely refined in this last year. It's teamwork, flexibility, adaptability have been key ingredients. Keeping an eye on energy levels, on our mental health within the team, as we've stepped into one day of fear and having to turn things inside out to another day of being energized by new ideas. I think what we've experienced is that a lot of us have been on high alert. For those that have kept working through the pandemic, we certainly have kept working. So that's been something we're really learning to keep an eye on, as far as keeping the well-being and finding the balance so that we can sustain as we move through this constant change that we live in. So on that note, we redesigned lots of times. We have kept presenting throughout the pandemic. We've been really fortunate with our funders, particularly Creative Scotland, who have allowed us to be flexible and do what we feel is best and what is needed within our local community. We've worked in partnership with the artists that we work with. Alan, we had Surge Street Theatre project here. That was one of our first projects. And, you know, that was a class example because we had to kind of work within what was allowed at the time and what the police and what Murray Council would allow, rather than doing a performance. We ran the workshop as we would have, but we didn't advertise that we would be running a performance of street theatre. The workshop participants simply went outside and practiced their newly learnt skills in the streets in and around the Forres and Findhorn area. So it's little changes like this that have meant that we've been able to continue to deliver work. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Chrisanna. Can I urge those of you who are currently not sharing, because we're such a small group, it would be nice to get to know each other a little bit. Rebecca, Clive, Jamie, Andrew, and whoever's here from the Walking Theatre Company. Unless, of course, you're still in your pyjamas and whatever, you feel free not to show. I think the point Chrisanna just mentioned about being on high alert, but not necessarily knowing that we're on high alert, because it was a mental state that we wouldn't necessarily have been aware of. I only became aware of quite how on the edge we all were last year, learning about digital, going digital, and also going live when it came to this year, and the prospect of going back to the festival that we'd run before meant a real energy drop, actually, meant a real energy change. So just being aware of that and keeping, you know, and being rather more aware of the well-being of one's colleagues as well as one's of artists and audiences has meant quite an increased workload, hasn't it? Anything anybody else wants to feed in on that?
I've got sorry.
Emir, is that the correct pronunciation?
Yes, that's
Emma?
very good.
Yeah.
Yeah, just a couple of things really. We're a small rural touring scheme which covers the northeast of Scotland, Aberdeenshire, Moray, some work in the city. So all our work is volunteer based, tends to happen in village halls. What we found with digital, that our traditional audience didn't migrate to digital, because the events they attend are as much to do with the social as it is about the arts. And what was great about all the digital content that you could suddenly access was that you could have a taste of worldwide culture. But what we also discovered was very quickly you can lose a sense of place. So instead of being promoters, we became producers and produced a couple of audio Doric plays, which is the local dialect in the northeast, to try and keep that sense of place within this kind of world culture that was happening, and I think that's important. As far as presenting work, this is one I struggle to break, because when we do, our promoters are very, very tied to their venue, to their hall, and I've got this thing where I'm trying to get them to think outside the hall, and think about those other spaces in the community, but no, they feel safe in these kind of spaces. But when it works, the interest, as you say, in audience is absolutely amazing. And Fingen, which is a very tiny hall, they had all or nothing aerial dance, and it wouldn't fit in the hall. So they took over the church where it would fit. And it was a fantastic evening, and it was jam-packed full. There was a waiting list, so there's an appetite for this, but it's getting the volunteers to think, okay, if I can't use my little hall, let's take over the church, or let's take over another building that we could use, or an outdoor space. So those are the two things I'm kind of grappling with. It's that sense of place when it comes to digital, and how can I get volunteers more interested in promoting physical work, indoor or outdoor.
Yeah. And having run an arts centre, I can fully understand that, wanting to stay within those walls and thinking, well, it's not my focus to be outside it and to be elsewhere. But showing and telling what's been achieved in that wonderful evening that you describe, and sharing that, I'm sure will be part of it. Emma, you wanted to come in.
Hi, I'm the arts officer for Orkney Islands Council. So I'm one of those very rare, still existing creatures. I realise it's quite a privilege to still have that kind of a role, and have a local authority that considers the validity of that role. Just thought I'd share a couple of things that have kind of emerged through last year and this. One is in a schools context. I mean, I don't directly promote, but my budget pays for the National Schools Touring, which is run by Imaginate. And just prior to lockdown, we'd agreed that, in the autumn we would have the 2 standard shows for primary. There'd be a nursery primary 1, and then there would be the primary 5, 6, 7. You can appreciate in Orkney, some of the schools are so wee that actually, unless the content is really inappropriate, that's just whole cohorts. And what would generally happen is a slightly larger primary would play host, and the smaller ones would come to that central point. And Anna from Imaginate did a quick panic call just prior to the first lockdown and said, I'm about to be put on furlough, don't know for how long. I can't believe that we can't offer something. Are you up for supporting the something, whatever it might be? And it struck me that it was incumbent on us not to lose that place for young audiences. So he said, yes, of course, and to the same tune of the funding, so just consider we're in on it. What transpired when she came back off furlough, ping-ponged back out of furlough and then came back in again, was an offer, and like somebody said earlier, that determination to not lose the liveness. And one of the offers for the nursery P1 was shown a Repe show, Potato Needs a Bath, which is, for anybody who hasn't seen it, doesn't know anything about it, check it out. It's just off the wall, but it's exactly what small people get. And when I was asked by the head of education, sort of, what is it picking up in terms of the curriculum? And I said, let the kids watch it and they'll come back and tell us. But what Shona did was able to create a filmed version, and that showed in schools. And the following week, they were invited to come to Potato's party, for which he required the bath, obviously. For a kind of 25-minute party. What that's enabled here in Orkney, every single school that wanted it, and that was every single school, to have that in their school. They didn't have to travel anywhere. So that sense of place you've just spoken about, Mayor, was really very, very drilled in. I know this is not outside art, but just that importance of place. Well, for the first time, they had it directly in their school. A secondary element was that there was a lot of interactive support. Normally, they would get that one hit, and schools may do some lead-up work. They may do some post work. I would never know. This I did know, because when I went to the live events, there were birthday cards and birthday hats and birthday additional vegetables all attending the party. It was mentioned in the Scottish Parliament how successful that was. We were the place that they tested that in. we are trying to make Orkney a testing bed. We'll give it a go. We're compact enough for that to happen. So that was one incredibly successful thing. We don't
I'm going to stop you there, Emma, because I'm just to expand.
Yeah, sure.
But that notion of being finding a new role for yourselves as a test bed is excellent. But I think that this is a valuable point you make about the extension beyond. It would have been just a show. Post-COVID, there is the preamble, there is the pack, there are the additional activities. There is a much longer tail, and I'm going to go back to Patrick and Alan, our speakers on that. Is that something that you found, that artists are not just making a piece of work that stands alone, but there is more, there is that longer tail, that it has a longer life? And then I might go back to Emia's point about the different audiences that attend different aspects of the work. Patrick and then Alan.
Well, I guess here in Antwerp at my festival, which is not really a festival because it's a summer season, because we bring a lot of new work, it's important for us to bring it for a long time so it can develop. So also this year, some shows are running for 2 months, sort of for a month. So we're quite confident that at the end of that run, the show is okay. And also what we found is that, especially because we're in a summer holiday season, that it creates more possibility for colleagues, professionals, programmers to come and see it. They don't have to come this one time.
Yeah.
We have 3 shows running for 2 months. So there's no excuse not going to see it.
No excuse at all.
No.
And that is a real luxury. I don't think we've got, I mean, unless anybody is going to correct me, I don't think we've got anything that's running for the same kind of time where artists have that opportunity to refine and develop over time in relation to audience feedback. So that's one kind of longer tail. Alan, have you got a different example?
Well, I think, I mean, so in terms of longevity, the stuff that we've been experimenting with and looking at is in terms of the digital engagement over a longer period of time, because we don't have the luxury to be able to do stuff for that length of time here, largely for financial reasons, but for other things too. But so the digital thing, and I think it's interesting what Amir was saying, to sort of link into that as well about sense of place. So that because people slip into habits quite easily, and what's happened with the digital world is that people have got into the digital world who weren't very familiar with it before, and then they do what we're doing now, which is just sit in their rooms with their, and everyone now arranges their bookcases nicely, and so there's a whole sort of fashion thing around Zoom rooms. But I think in terms of getting a sense of place, and also I think from what Amir's saying, is sort of getting people out of the 4 walls of their thing. It's like, in the north of Scotland, there's loads of people doing mountain bikers, and I know that loads of people there have got GoPros because they stick them on their helmets and post things. So get those people and then get them outside doing stuff in your space outside, and do that online, and then people can watch it. And then you can create a sense of space online, which can also help people reimagine what they would do outside their own walls. So I think it's really, how those things interact, and and in terms of access and stuff, like people coming down, I mean, it's a different thing, it's sports, but like people coming down a mountainside on a bike and just doing that, that's quite an interesting thing that people who are outside of those worlds don't engage in, and then engaging those people with people who do arts and then reimagining the outside in your region. I think the digital art is a really good way of connecting and connecting with space that other people are unfamiliar with.
Well, let's hear from others then on that. I mean, just on that question of sense of place, when we did a 1-day digital festival in Redcar, but we shot it in a gallery with a presenter so that you could see behind him Redcar going on, and we sent a thriftmobile out and about with a roving reporter to send messages back. So there was that interactivity between the presenter, the thriftmobile, and the online recorded and live activity to try and embed it in Redcar, which is really challenging. Any other thoughts on sense of place and maintaining that? we don't have to dwell on that. I'm aware we've only got 5 minutes left, which is astonishing. It feels as if we're only scraping the surface here. But can I hear from any of those others who haven't spoken yet on producing new work and what you've learnt in 2020, 2021 and what you're taking forward? Jamie or Andrew?
I can talk, yeah, a little bit about the artist perspective. I was a digital artist before, working in theatre performance. And then everyone was approaching me to film stuff, make animation, make content. And I guess just producers being sort of in shock at the process, and then also the cost, and then kind of it being kind of half of coming back with quotes and being double what they'd sort of planned for. And then as a kind of maker, having to sort of like do a lot of work for free or just do really long hours to sort of like, so I think as much as there was big shifts to go digital content makers kind of had to sacrifice quite a lot or do it, you know, like just give equipment away and free to actually make that happen. And I'm not entirely sure. It was an amazing learning experience for me, but I don't know if we always got the credit for how much we had to sort of
No, I'm sure you
do for that.
I'm sure you didn't, Jamie, and thanks for drawing that to our attention. And it's inevitable, isn't it, when producers or artists move into a different arena, that there are things that they don't know. I mean, if you go into outdoor projection for the first time, you're shocked at the cost of the projectors. You hadn't budgeted for it. So equally with your time and your expertise. But yes, we need to remember that. Andrew, you wanted to come in.
Yeah, so just a sort of observation from a sort of artist point of view or from a maker point of view about digital work. I mean, an observation that I've had is that a lot of like streaming work that you maybe see, like people who have Twitch channels or like things like this, I've noticed that a lot of that work can be very what you might call low effort. There's like a lot of low effort content, which isn't a bad thing. And so for me, it's been interesting to notice sometimes from an artist's point of view, it feels very satisfying to make, you know, you can make 10 minutes that's very intense. And so for me, something that I'm still working out is how to, people engage obviously with the digital world in a different way, because you're maybe not so focused. If you're in a theater building or if you're at a show, you're maybe very focused on the show. But if you're on your computer, you can maybe be making your dinner as you engage with the online cabaret. So for me, it's just raising these questions. Okay, how can I adapt what I do to make it work with those different rules, if that makes sense?
So can you just give us a quick snapshot of the kind of work you were making before?
So I was making sort of physical theatre and outdoor performance, cabaret things, sort of quite physical work, and quite a lot of the time, about like the live setup with the audience and interaction and stuff.
Grand. Yes, and that's all part of us having to adapt. Alana, Clive, did either of you want to come in before we move to the end?
Hi there. Hi everyone, my name's Alana. I'm from the Walking Theatre Company. We're based in rural Argyll and perform all over the UK and beyond. One of the main struggles for us, similar to what Andrew has said, is making that connection with the audience. Our work is very much removing the fourth wall and being, every show is different and flexible to the audience and the location that we have. So taking that online was quite something, and a big learning curve. It's been, I think we as a company have really used the time to explore different markets and explore that digital element, and we've done a lot of creative work and learning, which we would like to take forward and hopefully have that live and digital work. We created an online murder mystery on Zoom, which was a huge learning experience. We came in from a meeting saying, oh, we're going to do this and we're going to do that. And then once we actually tried to put it to shape it, we said, no, that's not going to work. That is not going to work. So the development time was a bit longer than we'd initially thought. but it was in the end it was a huge success, and we were able to partner with Itazone, which was great for us to sell the tickets, because we, as a social enterprise, we've got over 40 shows available throughout the year, and we sell them to clients and organizations. So we don't have that audience database, we have the client database. So that was a new learning curve for us, but delighted to be back out performing live now.
Yes, I think despite the real positives and pluses of digital engagement, for those of us who are primarily outdoors, it's great to be back out there, but with that new learning and with those new relationships and that new understanding, hopefully, Jamie, of how other artists work, and valuing that. Now, Scott, I can see that we're past the 12:05. Should we be coming out at this point? The main room.
Yeah, we're just discussing now, because I think some of the other breakout rooms were a bit slow to start compared to us, so I'm waiting for confirmation now that
I knew we'd be the best.
Yeah.
I think I was about to draw us to a bit of a close anyway, and to thank in particular Patrick for staying with us in the middle of his festival and for his presentation. I was just inspired by those foot scrapers and those small interventions that an artist can make. How extraordinary. Oh, look, 5 more minutes has been agreed, Scott has told us. So I will curtail my effusive thanks to Alan. I can see that Chrisanna's hand is up, and we'll just carry on a couple more minutes.
Well, since we've got a couple more minutes, I thought just picking up on some of that digital conversation, we've just launched our summer program, which is all live, all outdoors. So if anybody fancies a trip up to the northeast of Scotland all summer long. And we've been also having this conversation around how to keep content on social media live. We have a budget. We're used to producing high quality film content, and that's what we have done for 10 years across all our work. And we will have some of that high quality film content in an end of summer highlights film. But exactly that, Jamie, we can't afford to work with our filmmaker in that way to provide the content that we imagine, which is kind of trying to keep things live online and really upping what we would normally do with that. So we're having a very open conversation with the filmmaker, and he's also in a learning curve of, okay, there's this requirement, and actually, how do we get those 5-second snippets as we go so that we can remain those relationships. So yeah, ongoing conversations. We're looking at staff training around simple things with mobile phones. How can we do that a bit better? Maybe we invest in a wee camera, and just, we're not going to become filmmakers, but we could work with our filmmaker, gain some expertise for those tidbits all summer long, as well as have our high quality film produced at the end. But
I would like to bring us back into the real world again, just briefly. I mean, just looking at Patrick's images, and I'm sure Alan's doing something similar now, of the spaced out audiences, the marked off grids, the keeping that social distance while the guidance is currently with us, and we're told it's going to go, but it might return. Any learnings there? Anything that any of you are taking forward about working in public space, but dealing with those restrictions?
Well, so I've spent quite a long time persuading Glasgow City Council to to not have marked grids on the floor, and I've managed to get somewhere. We've got a very limited number of people allowed on our park. However, the persuasive model that I was looking at is like, basically everyone goes to the supermarket and stands 2 meters apart from each other. So we don't need, when you're at an arts festival, to stick a load of things on the floor for people to stand in. And it's like everybody, I mean, largely everybody is compliant with these things and sort of takes their own responsibility. And I think if we use that as a conversation going forwards, I think that will help. If it's like, look, if you can do it in Morrison's, you can do it in a park. Do you know what I mean? It's like,
in Morrison's, you can do it for Morris dancers. can't you?
Exactly that.
And on that note, on that bombshell, bring back the Morris dancer. I'm going to draw this session to a close because we had 1 more minute. So back to that main room, everybody. Thank you again, Patrick. Thank you, Alan. Thank you, Scott, for facilitating. Andrew, Alana, Emma, Prasanna, Jamie, Emir, and Aaron and Clive we didn't see, but thank you for being with us, and see you all again in a moment in the other space.